So, if possible, can you do introduce yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Uh, Hi, everyone. Khalid Osman. I'm an assistant professor of civil and environmental engineering at Stanford University. I'm also a center fellow at the Woods Institute for the Environment and also affiliated with both the King Center for Global Development and the Center for Comparative Studies on Race and Ethnicity at Stanford University. Got my PhD from the University of Texas at Austin in civil and environmental engineering, and my undergrad at the University of Portland. And originally, I'm from the West Coast, from Portland originally.
Mhm. Sounds like very achieved. Can you like describe what your field of study is?
Yeah, so I'm in civil engineering. I mostly work on infrastructure management and thinking about how we can incorporate how we can combine social and technical systems together, mostly looking at it from a lens of equity and justice. And my research primarily focuses on water infrastructure or water sector infrastructure, I should say. That includes water, sanitation, and stormwater. But overall, I do teach on all infrastructure systems, so from transportation all the way down to structural and things like that. I can teach all of it, but my primary research focus is on water infrastructure.
That's great to hear. So, I was wondering, why did you choose this field to study?
The field is in civil and environmental engineering or water research.
Both.
Yeah, so growing up, I really wanted to be a doctor. But I realized really early I don't like needles and I don't like blood. And so, but I still loved math and science. And so I was trying to think, what can I use my math and science brain for? Engineering was a natural fit, and I specifically chose civil engineering because of the impact it can have on people. Since I was a kid, I really just wanted to help as many people as I can. And people interact with civil infrastructure every single day. So I figured that'd be a good place to sort of implement my own ideas and use that as a launching pad for my career. I chose water specifically because I started to notice inequities in water systems after Flint happened. I started my graduate studies right when about 1 year, we were 1 year removed from the Flint water crisis. I'm not sure if y'all are old enough to know the Flint water crisis, but it was in Flint, Michigan. They had switched water sources and residents were served poor drinking water quality, and most of those residents were people of color, mostly actually African American communities. And so I was super inspired by that and decided to research, what was the decisions that led to that happening, and how can we prevent them from happening to other communities in the future. And so my research tries to inform a lot of those decision-making processes.
Mhm. Very interesting. Speaking of water systems and climate change, so how does climate change basically affect like the water systems, or how can it?
In multiple ways, right? Water is a source that's dependent on precipitation and condensation evaporation. When you don't have as much rain, right, our rivers don't flow as well as they should, and they don't have as much water to meet the demand. And so we're impacted by droughts. All of that to say is droughts really impact water supply, both in groundwater and in just surface water. The other side of the coin is when you have too much water and your stormwater infrastructure can't keep up, you end up with floods, sometimes backing into people's homes, flooding streets, etc., because the stormwater couldn't keep up. And we're seeing with climate change now that we're getting the extremes on both sides. We're getting very extreme droughts, and then at the same time, we're getting very extreme and intense rain events, and they're happening more frequently. And in both those cases, it creates challenges for water systems to function.
Mhm.
Interesting. So, I was wondering what some ongoing projects that you have going on.
Yeah, I have a couple ongoing projects. We have a lot. I'll just list a couple here. One, we're looking at perceptions of water quality in East Palo Alto and Detroit to really understand why residents there aren't trusting the water. Why are they drinking bottled water instead of tap water? In Alabama, I have a project on sanitation justice, looking at septic system failures in rural Black communities and what's led to that happening. That's also another climate change issue there, where the flooding is making it so that the septic tanks can't stay in the ground, or that they're over flooding pretty often and putting sewage into the streets and into people's backyards. In Houston, we're looking at green stormwater infrastructure, and if we can implement green stormwater infrastructure in African American and low-income communities, how does that impact their overall well-being and their infrastructure health, and how does that prevent flooding? In New Orleans, we're looking at saltwater intrusion into water system, drinking water systems, and how that's impacted the community's trust of tap water there. We're also doing some studies, just some policy analysis on the most recent infrastructure bill and seeing if it's actually meeting its desired outcomes. Trying to think, what else are we working on? Oh, in California, we're working a lot on trying to inform drinking water consolidations and consolidated drinking water systems, and how that's either meeting or not meeting the human right to water in California. Off the top of my head, it's been a long day. Those are the ones I can remember, but we've got, sort of a plethora of different research projects going on across the US.
That sounds really exciting. So is this like more of a teamwork, collaborative process going on, right? So is it a collaboration with professors, or is it with like other organizations and
Both.
such?
So I
Oh,
collaborate with other faculty across at universities across the US, but then all of our projects have community partners who are on the ground. So in Alabama, we're working with the Center for Rural Enterprise and Environmental Justice. In Houston, we're working with Bayou City Waterkeepers. In Detroit, we're working with We the People of Detroit. In East Palo Alto, we're working with Nuestra Casa, CRC, Climate Resilient Communities, and a couple other organizations. But all of these projects are community engaged, community-based projects. So we have partners on the ground that help us connect with the communities directly.
that's great.
Yeah. And what other previous projects have you had, and how have they impacted the environment?
Yeah, so in that's a hard question in terms of how they've impacted the environment. But in my PhD, my research was mostly focused on a few things. One, defining what equity means for water infrastructure systems. And then two, understanding how we can incorporate equitable outcomes into new technologies such as water reuse systems. And so I guess water reuse affects the environment, where we can, reuse both wastewater and gray water, water that you use for washing your hands and things like that when you go to the bathroom. How do we reuse that rather than putting it back into the river or going through an extensive process of disinfecting it, cleaning it, and putting it back into our drinking water supply? And so I would say that positively impacts the environment, because we're looking at reusing existing resources rather than trying to extract new resources. And it's always a benefit to the environment when you're not extracting more resources from it. My final project was mostly focused on disaster response as it relates to water infrastructure systems. And then I do I do a lot of work now on green stormwater infrastructure and nature-based solutions to flood prevention. So rather than building more stormwater pipes, can we put in more bioswales, and can we have more rain catchment devices, and can we think about how do we implement permeable pavements in communities? And I think all those things positively affect the environment.
So what are some like climate policies or policies that you want to implement to combat climate change?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my research is focused on environmental justice, and so I would say policy around more resources and equal benefit from environmental improvements for disadvantaged in communities. I think that's the policy I would put in place. I don't do a whole lot on air quality or energy, but I think there's a lot of policy opportunities in those areas, in thinking about how do we serve all of society when we're thinking about sustainability and climate change. And then also, I mean, I guess one policy I'd like to see is for more developed countries to give back to developing countries. And I know there's some efforts in that direction now, but I'd like to codify it a little more that, we are the largest producers of carbon, and however, the entire earth is suffering from it. And so how do we put in place safeguards for those smaller countries with who and those middle and low income countries that aren't contributing to climate change as heavily as we are, but are suffering the consequences of it.
Do you think that like the US is like doing a good job in terms of like these like water sustainability and like this environment things?
I mean, I think that's a hard question to answer. I don't think it's a clear cut doing a good job or a bad job. I think it's, is there a lot of room for improvement? I believe so. I think there's always room for improvement, but I think that's been sort of the US as a country is always constantly looking for ways to improve. And I think that's why innovation is so deeply rooted here. And so I would say, we're not great, but I wouldn't say we're terrible either. But there's a lot of work to do and there's a lot of opportunity to improve. And I look forward to sort of helping lead that charge.
So, lastly, we were wondering what advice would you give to someone who's also interested in your field of study?
Yeah, give it a try. I mean, I think we need more people to be interested in civil and environmental engineering. The impact that you can have on society is massive. I mean, think about the, roads that people use every day, or the water people drink every day, or the toilets people flush every day. Contributing to the design and management and operations of all those systems require civil engineers. And so I would say, I mean, definitely, take the risk, give it a try, reach out to more people, do what y'all are doing here, and just talking to other civil engineers to gain an insight on what do we actually do. I think sometimes that's the biggest hurdle for people to understand is, what do we actually do? But it's always nice to know that those bridges and those parks and the waterways and the levees, I mean, those are all designed and built by civil engineers. And so it's definitely a rewarding field, and I would recommend more people give it a try. I mean, as you know, now we know climate change is a huge challenge. That's why we're having this conversation, and I think civil engineers will have a huge role to play in ensuring that cities are sustainable and equitable for all people.
Thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
I also noticed on like your bio, you had a couple of fellowship programs.
Yeah.
Can you like describe like what those are and like what you did?
Yeah, so the Gates Fellowship, I don't know if it's still around. I think they have it, they call it the Gates Scholarship now, the Gates Millennium Scholarship. But it was a really cool scholarship program that you can apply for as a senior in high school. And it was the Bill and Melinda Gates sort of making an investment in you to completely pay for all of your education, regardless of which school you went to. As long as you could get accepted to that school, they would pay the full bill. That includes room and board, tuition, extra materials, travel, etc. So it was a very, very blessed and fortunate to receive that scholarship. The Ford Foundation Fellowship also sunsetted, sadly, but it was a fellowship for students of color and low-income students who wanted to pursue PhDs. So it was 3 years of funding, I think at a certain amount each year, but it also opens you up to this huge community of scholars who are also Ford Fellows, and you sort of have this huge network that now you can interact with and engage with as part of the fellowship. I think as far as fellowships goes, those were the only two that I had. But
Mhm.
if there's any other specific award that you've seen on my bio, I'm happy to talk more about them.
I think that's about it for us with the interview questions. It was really, really nice meeting you, Professor Osman.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Didn't get a chance to learn more about y'all.
Oh yeah, we can do a brief like introduction right now if you want. So, hello, I'm Jacqueline. I'm a sophomore. I'm attending Collingwood School that's in Vancouver, BC. So in Canada.
Very
Yeah.
cool. How did
Yeah.
you find me all the way in Canada?
So, I was originally planning on having a World Youth Conference, but then we're doing an offline one right now in BC. That's going to be happening on around June 5th. So instead of having an online one, we were like, okay, let's do an offline one instead. So I collaborated with some other youth-led nonprofit organizations. So we have that set up at UBC. And then so we originally had a World Youth Conference every single year,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we had pretty much we always sent out emails to professors and asking if they wanted to have maybe a quick 10 to 15 minute speech during that conference. And we were like, and I was searching up like environmental science professors, and you popped up. I was like, oh, that's cool. So let me
Uh,
hit an email.
Very cool, very cool. I'm from Pacific Northwest. I was actually in Vancouver last summer. I had a great time. It's a beautiful city. I love it.
Yeah, I saw like on one of your publications, like the 2023 one of like the assistant professors that you collaborated with is also from PVC. I'm pretty sure. Is it Amanda something?
I don't think I've collaborated with an Amanda.
Because like um it's called Environmental Science for the Betterment of All. And
Yes, yes. She's at
one
UC. I'm
yeah.
sorry. I completely forgot about that paper. We were doing it all via virtually. And I forgot about that. But yeah, that was published last year. It was cool. She's awesome. I like her a lot. If you get a chance to meet her, you should take it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the World Youth Conference, I think a year ago was in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really wanted to attend. I didn't get a chance to. So they're not doing it this year at all?
Um, so essentially, I feel like the World Youth Conference that Climate Change Task Force hosts is kind of separate from like I think what you're talking about. I'm
Oh, I
pretty
see.
sure like ours is more of like a bunch of students, youth-led students from an organization just trying to host sort of like an imitation of it, but we're still spreading around the same like message. Yeah.
I see. Very cool. And Jonathan, you want to tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh yeah, my name is Jonathan, and I'm also a sophomore, and I go to school in Southern California. And yeah, I met Jacqueline through this climate change task force program, and yeah, we've just been working with her on these interviews, and yeah, we just want to try and spread the message about climate change.
Very cool. Where do you go? Where in Southern California?
Oh, sorry.
Where in Southern California?
Uh, Los Angeles.
Oh,
It's
very cool. I'm a
yeah.
big Lakers fan.
Mm-hmm.
It's my team. I actually have my mouse pad.
That's really nice.
But not very cool. It was great talking with you both. Please, if there's anything I can do, any follow-up, just let me know.
Yeah, and is there anything you want to say to like the people who might view this video?
Oh, I love the energy that the youth have in regards to climate change and really trying to design and be proactive in what the future holds for them, right? The future that you all will inherit. And so I just say continue having all of this great energy. You're channeling it the right way. I'm super proud of you all. And if there's anything that I can do, please let me know. I'm always happy to support youth and youth-led initiatives. And so mostly my message is super proud of you all. Keep working hard. Um, keep up all of the great work, keep up the advocacy and continue to fight for what the future you inherit looks like. Yeah, I
All
think
right.
that'd be my message.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Osman.
For sure. Y'all have a great day.
You
Yeah, you
too.
too.